and I have been retained and have the privilege of representing Tabitha Long and her family in relation to the July 31st tragic death by drowning of their 9-year-old son, Bentley. Now, without question, the past 2 months for this family, especially Mrs. Long, has been tragic, extremely, extremely difficult, and she's been living a horror. She's been living a nightmare that she's waiting to wake up from, but she can't. This was compounded this past Thursday when she was arrested on charges by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Now, naturally, she was shocked by these charges, did not expect these charges, and categorically denies these charges. Now, it's very important to note that this is a case that cannot be tried in the court of public opinion. There are facts, there's investigation, there's evidence, and there's witness testimony that must come out, that must be put to light in order for all the facts to be brought to the table. So when we're inside the four walls of the courthouse, we don't rush to judgment, and we let everything fall as it may, and then make a conclusion. Now, last Thursday, Sheriff Chronister of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office gave a very lengthy press conference surrounding these charges and surrounding the facts of Bentley's death. Now, in watching that press conference, there are certain facts that were outlined by the sheriff that were concerning to us and troubling to us, largely because there were discrepancies based upon the investigation that we had undertaken over the past 2 months. Now, what I will say at this point is this case is in its infancy. We have not even received, as of yet, any discovery from the state attorney's office. I have not had the liberty of reviewing or overseeing any of the investigation, reviewing any of the evidence, any of the witness testimony that was conducted by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. So with that regard, there are certain components to this incident that I will not be able to comment on today as it relates to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office investigation. However, there are certain facts that were outlined last Thursday that are just not correct. Specifically, it seemed to be a major talking point for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office that Bentley, who was 9 years old at the time of his death, was unable to swim. This is simply not true. Bentley was able to swim. He had the ability to swim. He was 9 years old, so naturally he was not the strongest swimmer. But under no circumstances was this a situation where Miss Long took her son into a creek who was unable to swim. That's just not true. Additionally, it seems that the sheriff's office is under the impression that Miss Long frequented this watering hole, that she went swimming in this watering hole several times prior to this tragic incident on July 31st. This is also not factually accurate in that she did not frequent this watering hole. She was not aware of the tumultuous conditions that Bullfrog Creek had. There was heavy undercurrent, steep drop-offs. The depth dropped from 3 feet all the way down to 10 feet plus. She did not know this existed. Had she known, of course she would not have entered. Of course she would not have voluntarily put her child at risk, or anyone else at risk for that matter, including herself. Now, additionally, the sheriff advised that there were fabrications. Now, he did reference that there were witnesses and witness testimony that he largely, or his deputies, largely relied upon. Now, as it relates to this testimony, he did reference children that were there. And there were children there. But the ages were not mentioned. The ages of those children were all younger than 9-year-old Bentley. These were young children of tender years that quite possibly may never see the courtroom because they may not even be competent or capable to testify. These are 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. So that's something that will have to be investigated on our part as well. Now, essentially, this is no doubt a very, very difficult situation for the family. But what's also very, very important is that the story that was outlined by the sheriff's office last week was a very concise version and left out some facts. For instance, where the Longs resided was at a mobile home park that was adjacent to this creek. And the owner of this park, Whispering Waters, was actually the owner of dozens upon dozens of properties in Florida. This is a landlord that is experienced of owning properties, experienced of housing tenants. So experienced in that they appointed property managers. There were property managers on this property. In fact, one of the managers even admitted that they knew this water was dangerous. They knew it was a hazardous condition that people should not enter or even go near. The owner knew this in as much as he undertook a duty to erect a fence, erect a steel fence that was separating the creek from the properties to prevent access. Now, over time, this fence fell to disrepair. And even at some point prior to this incident, the property manager of all people decided to cut up this fence, a portion of this fence, and use it for scrap metal. Now, in cutting up the fence, what that resulted in is a gaping hole that seemingly the tenants of this property, including the Longs, led to the presumption that, okay, we could go in, no issue here, it's safe, perfectly safe. But it wasn't, unbeknownst to Miss Long. So that's why it's very, very important to let all the facts come out, let all the evidence come out, not have this be a case tried in the media or tried in the court of public opinion, but tried in Hillsborough County Courthouse, and not to rush to judgment. So again, I thank you for your time, and I'll attempt to answer any questions I'm able to.
The sheriff said last week that your client was high and drunk at the time. What do you say to that claim?
So the sheriff's claims last week, as it relates to my client allegedly being high and intoxicated at the time, largely was based upon his investigation. Toxicology that for some reason took 2 months. This is not a roadside stop. Why take 2 months? What happened in those 2 months? And this is something that we intend on investigating and determining exactly what happened. So as it relates to the allegations, we certainly deny. However, with respect to the evidence that the sheriff was relying upon, that's something that we are not privy to as of yet, largely because this case is in its infancy. It was filed last week. Mandatory disclosures have not occurred as of yet.
Explain that again. You said the toxicology reports took months?
Yeah, so...
but she was tested after the incident?
Yeah, so what happened was she was tested, to my knowledge, the day of the incident. They were sent back to the toxicology lab, and according to the sheriff himself, to my knowledge, it took 2 months to get those results. I don't know what happened. I don't know why it took 2 months. It might be standard practice. However, that's something, like I said, it's something we're going to have to investigate.
But you said you denied that she was drunk.
We deny all the allegations and all the charges.
So was Bentley on her back or not on her back? Did he go out without permission?
So as it relates to the facts of the loss and whether or not Bentley was on her back or not on her back, that information that was outlined by the sheriff seemingly came from witnesses. Now, what I will say, our investigation, there are discrepancies related to the facts that were outlined by the sheriff. Now, I'm not in a position today to divulge our investigation without reviewing and understanding what witness statements and what evidence the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office was relying upon.
So did she tell the sheriff's office that he was on her back or not?
I have no knowledge of that.
So again, you said Bentley could swim. Where do you think they got the idea that he could not swim?
I have no idea where they got the idea that he could not swim. I know he could swim. This comes from, again, our investigation. I'm not going to divulge any witnesses specifically, but as it relates to the idea that he could not swim, that goes to what I'm saying in that I'd like to see what witness statements and what information the sheriff's office has investigated that led to that conclusion.
So does she maintain that he went out on his own?
As it relates to her defense in this case and what happened at the time of the incident, this was a very, very traumatic incident. Now, with respect to witness testimony and whatever the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office has, we have not had the privilege of reviewing. So I'm hesitant at this point to dispute what the sheriff was saying as it relates to their confidential investigation to this point in time.
But what is she saying now?
As it relates to she's saying at this point, she's denying all the charges that have been filed against her.
No, I'm
Now,
saying
they said that it was her original story was a lie, that he followed her out there. Are you saying that they're lying, that her original story was true?
No, I'm not accusing. I want to make this clear. We are not accusing the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office of lying. As it relates to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office accusation of a fabricated story, it seemed from the press conference itself that this was largely relied upon from witness testimony. From the investigation that we've undertaken, there are discrepancies as it relates to certain things that were outlined by the Sheriff's Office. However, I'm not in a position to say that the Sheriff's Office is lying at this point until we review the complete state attorney's case file.
But the sheriff's office aside, what is she saying right now? He was in the back or was not? Did he go out on his own? What is
Yeah.
she saying right now? The
So-
sheriff's office aside.
So at this point, it appears that the Sheriff's Office, in their charges, is claiming that she took him into the creek. I would like to see, before commenting on that particular fact, what witness testimony they're relying upon to make that assertion. But as it relates to Ms. Long, she's categorically denying all charges and all allegations raised against her.
But what is she saying happened, though?
As it relates to what she says happened, this was a tragic incident, and this was a drowning that she had no idea how dangerous the conditions were. She had no idea that the undercurrent was such that it could lead to such an event. Now, as it relates to what the Sheriff's Office was stating and what the Sheriff's Office is alleging, I'm not in a position at this point to comment one way or the other as to the veracity of what they're saying as being truth or fiction.
So yes or no, is she saying that he went out on his own?
At this point, she is denying all the allegations raised against her.
But that was her original story, that he went out on his own. So is that what happened?
So, as it relates to what happened, the Sheriff's Office is stating that she fabricated her story in some way. Now, again, based upon the information we have in the investigation that we have undertaken over the past 2 months, we don't have information to corroborate what the Sheriff's Office is saying outside of reviewing what's in the Sheriff's file.
So let's not mention the sheriff at all. Just don't mention the sheriff at all. What is your client saying? Did he go out on his own or not?
My client is saying that she categorically denies all the allegations raised in this case.
Do you think this is an odd crime or an odd incident to prosecute?
What I will say is I'm not in a position to judge the state's decision as to what to prosecute or not. I am sure the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office did a thorough investigation. I'm sure they did everything in their power to interview every witness, review every piece of evidence, turn over every stone. However, at this point, being that we certainly deny all allegations raised, I would like to review the state attorney's file that will encompass the entirety of the investigation. And once that review is done, I'd be happy to comment further.
When will you be able to review that? Oh, I was just, when are you going to review that?
Within the designated amount of time, I would say within the next few weeks, we'll have the ability to review the file.
Going back to the toxicology, the sheriff said that, she was under the influence of Fireball and Bush Spear. Witnesses were there, older witnesses, Fireball and Bush Spear. Has your client mentioned any of that going on at that time or, being that far gone?
Well, what you say is interesting in that it's witness testimony. The witnesses that were there that the sheriff mentioned were children and a maintenance manager. I don't know who the maintenance person was because it's my understanding there were multiple maintenance personnel with Whispering Waters. But the other witnesses that the sheriff identified were young children that I'm not even sure are competent or capable to testify.
You listened to.
You said that she did not expect that such water to be that dangerous. Had she not been in it before? Was she not? Is this not something that they frequented?
Exactly. So what the sheriff noted was that there was witness testimony that identified or conflicted with what she had said as it relates to frequency of going into that watering hole. Now, she did not frequent this watering hole. She certainly did not know of the dangers. This was a dangerous creek, without question. Otherwise, something like this doesn't happen. She absolutely had no idea what she was setting herself into.
So with the uncle.
Two more
and-
questions.
Even with the uncle and the other child on the other side, you know, I guess from what I understand, the uncle was in there and with another child, made the pass, and she was doing the same thing. Am I correct?
So the people who were there was an uncle, and there were 4 total children, including Bentley. Now, as it relates to the uncle, what is your question?
That he was on the other side of the creek and her telling him to come on. I mean, so I guess, was it peer pressure? Did she mention anything about her trying to get to the other side because he made it, or anything to that extent?
So as it relates to the uncle, it's my understanding he did speak to the sheriff's office. He was one of the witnesses of this event. He was there that day. And as it relates to any conversations he had with the sheriff's office, I would again have to see those witness statements, whether they were written or recorded, to see exactly what he had testified to before Hillsborough County. One more.
Do you know if she tried to save her son when this all happened? Because when I asked the sheriff that last week, he sort of paused and seemed a little bewildered by it.
She tried to do everything in her power so that her son does not go under and get swept away.
So has she been to that creek before?
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate
Has she
your
been to that
time.
creek before?
Excuse me?
Has she been to that creek before?
No, she has not been inside that creek. She was not a frequent swimmer of that creek.
So that was her first time at the creek.
Was that her first time in the creek? What I will say is that she did not frequent the creek. I will have to see the witness testimony as it relates to whether or not she was a frequent swimmer of that creek. But that is not something that we have information of that time. Once we get the information, I would be happy to recommunicate with all of you as to what the findings are. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Picture of Bentley that you might be able to share?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
You all can email me.
Okay.
Okay.
And you'll submit the picture.
Yes, absolutely. You all have my contact information.
Send you an email and then you'll send a picture?
You send me an email
Okay.
with whatever your request is, and
Are you going to be able to see the picture today?
send me the email. I will